Hey guys, it's Ben with Myers Woodshop, and we're here with part 2 of getting to know Carbide Create. So in the last video, we went ahead and designed a star. So here we are in Carbide Create. We're going to open that up real quick. So you're going to come up to the top and click Open. We're going to find our file, the C2D file. Here we are, Star Tree Topper. And there's our star. And we're going to make a change, or I'm going to, because I was looking through the stock that I have, and we initially wanted, if you come over to the gear up top left, we initially wanted a 12 by 12 star. And I don't actually have this size in my shop. So we're going to change to what I have in my shop, which is 11.5. My height I'm going to change to 11.5. And the board I have that's already pre-cut, we're just going to use. The width is 13.9 inches wide. So we're going to hit apply. You can see it just changed. It's a little wider and a little narrower from top to bottom, but our star actually still fits in pretty perfectly. So you can move it around anywhere we want. But you notice when I'm moving it that these red lines are not moving. So I'm going to come up here and hit the back button, undo. I'm going to undo it again, undo it a third time. You can see it moved back to the way it was. So this is original. What we want to do is group all of these together so that when we move one thing, all the things inside move together. So we're just going to click with our left mouse, drag down and select everything. You can see it's all selected. It's all orange. And then we're going to go back over to the Design tab, and right below it's got this square with a triangle. It says Group Selection. If you let go and hold over it, we're going to click that, and you can see it disappeared. Now it's got a line with an X, and it changed to Ungroup. Well, now we've grouped it. If I click anywhere in this, you can see everything moves at one time. So that is a group of items. Now, if I wanted to ungroup and just move this line away, we would go back over to that square and triangle, and click it. Now it's ungrouped, and I can move just one thing a piece. But I want everything grouped, so I'm going to do this back button. So it moved it back. We're going to do it back again. And one more time. Select it all, and we're grouped right now. So that's perfect. That's what we want. All right, let's go back and change our stock size. 3.9 is the width, or 13. 13.9 is the width, and it was 11.5 is the height. This is just the board I had in my shop. You can see our retract height for some reason went to 0. We definitely want that not to be 0. Never have this at 0. We want this. We're going to change it to 4. Our toolpath, we're double checking, is the lower left. We need to remember that. Lower left of the square. Our stock thickness is 0.75. This is a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. And I have the Shapeoko XXL. And we're cutting into softwood. This is a piece of plywood. So we're going to hit OK. Here's our design again. Let's move our star to make sure we're within the bounds of the square here. I could move it anywhere I want, but I want to try to have as little waste as possible. So this will be like a strip of wood over here. It really doesn't matter. But I'm going to move it to the far left, making sure that my design is inside of this square. We're going to hit Toolpath. All our toolpaths are still saved from before. We can see the simulation. Oh, I'm selected in aluminum. I want to change back to, let's pine. See how it really doesn't matter, but you can see we're cutting the star out right here. So it's perfect. All right, we made those adjustments. We're going to go back down to Save G-code. We're going to click that. We're going to call this star Christmas tree. It's going to select Carbide G-code .nc. We're going to click Save. And now we can minimize this, and we can open up Carbide Motion. Here's Carbide Motion. This is Carbide Motion 4. This is the latest Carbide Motion. If you don't have this one, it looks a little different. This is 4.0.414. For some reason you have version 3. You're going to want to go ahead and update Garble and Carbide Motion to version 4. You get a lot of benefits from that. You can look back in my previous videos. I think it's the X-Carve versus Shapeoko Part 1, and I show you how to do that. Anyway, here we are in Carbide Motion, and it looks just like this when you open it up, and we are not connected to the Shapeoko. And if I click Connect to Cutter, it says Cutter not found. That is because my Shapeoko is either 1, not turned on from power, or 2, not plugged into my USB port. And right now I'm plugged in USB, but I'm not turned on power, so I'm going to go over and turn the power on. I'm going to click this little X first. Alright, we've turned the power on, so now we're going to click Connect to Cutter. And once it changed to job info, we know that it is now connected. The computer is reading the Shapeoko. Okay, so we're going to click on Load File, and we're going to find the G-code file, the .nc we created with Carbide Create. So we'll double click on the file, and you can see it loaded starchristmastree.nc. And these Toolpath extents, this is going to tell you how wide, how deep it's going to travel. You really don't need to pay attention to these as a beginning. Just know that if it has some numbers in here, you know you selected a file with some data. But starchristmastree.nc, perfect. We loaded our G-code. That's all for info and load. Next, we're going to click on Settings. And here you can see all about your Shapeoko. Of course, we have a Shapeoko 3. It does not show XXL, but we do have a Shapeoko 3. The Garble version, it's basically a BIOS. It's 1.1F. As of 11/26/2018. If you have anything lower than that, I really recommend to go ahead and upgrade. Again, check out my videos for that. SparkFun activation, you won't have to worry about this. Shapeoko table, this is showing you that I have the Shapeoko XXL. You know that because of my values of 830 by 850. If you have a different one, it'll probably be smaller than this. You can see you select which Shapeoko you have from the drop down. I have the Shapeoko XXL, so I'm going to click that. You will only need to do this once, or if you, for some reason, uninstall Carbide Motion and reinstall it. We're just going to tell the Shapeoko what it is. So you click on the drop down, I have the XXL, and you select Send Configuration Data. Once you click on that, you're not going to see anything. It's actually doing this in the background, but it is doing something, just know that. Next, let's check out the MDI tab. This is a tab that you probably won't use, but this is a manual way to send G-code. Again, this is an advanced feature. Stay away from this if you don't know what you're doing. Clicking on Run, this is where you'll run your file, but first we need to click on Jog. We're going to get this initialize machine. Press the button to begin homing cycle. Now I have homing switches on the XXL. They all come with that. I've never done it without a homing switch, so it may look a little different if you don't have homing, but I do, most people do. If you don't have the homing switches, I recommend going ahead and buying them. It makes your life a whole lot easier. But we're going to go ahead and click on Continue and begin homing the machine to the back right. Before homing your machine, you want to double check your workspace on the Shapeoko, double check your clamps. Anything is not in the way because it's going to start moving and you're not going to be able to control it. So make sure it's clear and go ahead and click on Continue. It shows you the homing machine. It'll first raise up and down the X or the Z value, and then it'll start moving the Y and X back to the back right. And you just let it do that until it's finished. Now once it's finished, you now see a new page. You're still on the jog file, but you see a jog position. And this is pretty interesting. On the left you have basically your table here. The Y plus, that's going to move your Shapeoko back to the rear. The Y minus will move your Shapeoko forward to the front. The X minus will move it to the left. The X plus will move it to the right. Then we have the Z plus and Z minus. Think of this as moving the bit up into the air, and the Z minus is moving the bit down into the wasteboard. Over here we have increment, plus and minus. Notice that it's in millimeters. This is again why I like to use millimeters for CNC. So right now 0.01, that's the smallest amount. And when you click on one of these buttons, it's going to move this Shapeoko 0.01, and you're going to barely be able to know that it's moving. Now you can't click any further in increment minus, but you can go increment plus. We're now at 0.1 millimeters. Now every time we click on any of these buttons, it's moving 0.1 millimeters in travel. Still, that's not very far. We're going to click on increment plus 1. We're now at 1 millimeter. Now every time we click this, we're moving 1 millimeter space up, down, in every direction. And finally, we have fast. I think that's probably 10 millimeters, but I don't honestly know. Anyways, if you're going to move this Shapeoko into position with your piece of wood, you're going to probably want to use fast. Okay, down here on the bottom left, we have set inch, set millimeter. So you can see now if I change the set inch and millimeter, I'm moving 0.1 inches every time. We're moving 0.01, or we can go back to millimeter, either way. Spindle on will not affect you at this point, as the Shapeoko cannot control the spindle as it comes from Carbide Create. I'm going to skip set 0 for now because this is something we'll do a little later. We do have the probe button. If you click on probe, this is if you have one of the Carbide touch probes. I have a separate video on this. Go ahead and check that out in my video list. It'll show you all about probing. If you don't have one of these, it's not necessary, but it is so much easier. But if you don't have a probe, then don't worry about this tab. If you do have one, go ahead and check out my video. Next, we're going to click on Rapid Position. You can notice we just changed, while we're still within the Jog tab, we just changed what the look is. Here you have essentially what your wasteboard looks like in a square form. You have the center of the wasteboard, the south wasteboard, north wasteboard, and anytime we click on any of these positions, it's going to move the cutting head to that position. So let's go. We're probably in the northeast, the homing position right now. Let's go ahead and click on north. And you see we just moved to that position in the back center. We're going to go ahead and let's click on west so you can see where that goes. Now we're in the middle left. But ideally, when we're going to change a bit, we want to be right at the south position. So we're going to click on this south. And that'll bring the cutter head straight to the front, an easy place for you to access changing the bit. Current offset, if you've set an XY value on a Z, you're going to click that. It'll take you to that every time. Current offset Z plus 6 millimeters. This is another Z. You're going to zero out your XY, and then you'll zero out your Z. These will take you to the last known positions. But as we haven't used that yet, we don't have any information here yet. Really, we're just using rapid positioning to get the cutter head somewhere fast on the board. Generally to south, because that's where you want to change your cutter head. Now, we just click done once we got there, and we go over to the Shapeoko, and we change the bit. We're going to change it to 201 because that's the bit we chose and the bit that came with the Shapeoko. So let's go change that now. So here we are at my Shapeoko. I am kind of on the floor showing you this. But generally you won't have this extra piece in the way. You can take a look. They have this piece. That's for a laser add-on. If you're interested in that, check out my other YouTube video for the J-Tech laser. But just ignore this piece if you don't have that and you don't want to use it. Anyways, here we are. Here is our cullet that we want to change out, the bit, And right now I have a V-bit in there, and we don't want to use that. We want to change out to our 201 cutter. We have our 201 cutter. If we pull it out, you can take a look. It's a pretty big bit. It is an upcut bit. As it spins, it pulls the wood up and out and ejects it. Not quite ideal for the top surface to be chip-free. The bottom surface will be chip-free. But either way, it's a double-sided star, so it doesn't really matter which side. A little sanding and you're perfect. We want to change that up into the cullet here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to bring you in closer. And here is our cullet. So I have the DeWalt spindle, so it's going to look a little different if you chose the Makita. But over here on the side, we have the yellow button, and we push that in, and that stops the bit cullet from spinning. We're going to take our wrench. We're going to put that in. There is 2 flat sides on this. We're going to put the wrench around that, and then we're going to spin it left, from right to left. And you want to be careful not to let the bit drop out, or it might damage the bit. So we remove that bit. Now we're going to take the bit, the 201 that we designed the star with, and we're going to insert that into the bottom. Now, how far in do you shove this? You at least want to be as deep as the cullet here. Some bits have a mark on them. The Amana bits in my What Bits Do I Use section on my blog, they all have that mark, and I love that mark. Check out my blog if you haven't to see those bits. But we're going to put it in at least as deep as the cullet. The deeper the better. You do not want to get down covering the parts of the flutes, these curved parts. So leave some away from there. So we'll tighten that up. We'll push this button in again to go ahead and get it pretty tight, and then we're going to go back with the wrench and go from left to right to tighten. That's looking at the machine. Get pretty tight. You don't have to manhandle this, but get it pretty tight. And there we are. We have our bit change out. Now let's go ahead and put our material down. So I got a lot of questions on how do I hold my material down. It is one for the ages. Anyways, you're going to get some wooden, I think these are made of oak clamps that work pretty well. If you have these, easy. You can hold the materials down on the corners and or push it together. That'll work well. Another option is these little deals from Rockler. They're very similar, except you can see there's a curve to them. I used these for a while. If you look at my wasteboard, you're going to see there's a lot of holes in the wasteboard, and those are threaded. That's kind of an aftermarket thing I did. And I use these cam clamps like this. You'll put something up against it, and then you'll pull it tight, and the tighter you pull it, the tighter it clamps it. This is really ideal for me where I'm at right now. And then finally, what I did a lot in the beginning using signs is if you can get a brad nailer. I just shot brads directly into the wasteboard. One of the things you have to get over on this machine is that a wasteboard is exactly that, waste. You're going to make marks in it. And I can't stand that when you spend this much money on a machine that you're going to take the bit, cut through something or make a mistake and start carving into your wasteboard. It's gonna happen, get over it, and just once you get past that mindset of, oh, I just ruined my machine, you really didn't. Remember, it's a wasteboard for a reason. It's really easy to replace. It's just a piece of MDF, and you're gonna do it anyways. So easy. Brad nails, that's another way. I'm gonna go ahead and use clamps, and let me show you how I do it. So you can see that the spindle is in the way. I want to move that out of the way. So again, we're gonna go back to rapid position. And we're going to click on North. We can really use any of these back here, but I'm just going to click on North and go ahead and get that spindle out of the way. Remember, get everything off the wasteboard. Make sure that your bit isn't touching the wasteboard so that it doesn't go back and break your bit. All right, guys, so here is my wasteboard. Here's my CNC, and I'm going to show you how I connect my piece of wood to my board. You can see mine looks a little different. Here's my original wasteboard down here. this is what yours is going to look like. Again, you can just go ahead and double-sided tape. You could brad nail. You can do all kinds of other things, but I made another piece of 3/4 inch that I put down on here with threaded inserts. You can see threaded inserts from behind. And if you look over here, I have some of these oops clamps from Suck It Dust Boot. They are my favorite clamp of all time so far. I'll go ahead and leave a link below to these, but they are threaded down into here with these little bolts, just like this bolt here. And I'm going to go ahead and use these. I like to use these as a fence. Since I don't have a fence on mine and I cut something out really big, I typically put these in as a fence. So here's our wasteboard. Here are the clamps that came with yours. If you bought a T, I might have got these when I got the T-Track. You can get the T-Track. That's a useful option that comes from Carbide. You just stick them on here like this on top. And then you'd take your bolts and go ahead and bolt it down, and it would hold your deal. I'm not going to use that because it's not the way I do it. This is just the way I do it, so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to use these little oops clamps. So what I'll do is I will take two, and since this is in a line, I'll take two and I will tighten them down. So when I push down from the top, this is square to the wasteboard, so we know that this is perpendicular and perfect. So we're held down here, and now up top I'm going to take these cam clamps, go ahead and stick it backwards up top. I'll stick one here and one here. Try to get even pressure on the corners. You don't want them all in the center because then it can move. I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down to about hand tight. So I got my bottom. Now I'm working on my top on my cam, and when I close it, it doesn't reach. You could put in more rows in between here, or we could just take a piece of wood. I'm going to use this clamp and fit it in between on both sides. And now when I tighten, it makes up for that gap. And this board is in as solid as it can go. And now I don't have to worry about when my bit is going around that I might hit a clamp that's higher than the material. That's one really good benefit of this. I'm not going to hit any clamps when I am going up or down around anything. So that's how I clamp. There's many different ways. Check it out on YouTube. I'm sure you'll find different ways, but this is my preferred method right now. Let's go ahead and bring our cutter to the bottom left, because that's how we set it up in Carbide Create, and we're going to zero out our bit. Alright guys, we're back to the computer, so we want to zero out our bit. So right now we're back in the back portion back here, and we know I set my board up kind of up here, so we can make it go from north to center pretty quick if we just click on center. So we're going to click that, and you can see it's moving forward. When we're done with that, and now we got to kind of fine tune it, we're going to click done over here, and we're back to this jog position. For right now, we're very rough. We're going to click on as fast as we can go, and we're going to start moving the Shapeoko up to where our material is. So right now I'm kind of in the back of the material, so we're going to click Y- and bring that to the front. You can see I click it once, it'll move, but if I click and hold in fast, it'll move it forward. Again, we're trying to go to the bottom left of the piece of wood. And now we're going to go to the left because we want to go to the left. So you're going to push X left. You see it's moving left. And we're just slowly trying to get close to the left of the board. You can see back here the bit is pretty far above, so we're going to lower the bit till we are just barely touching. We're going to change from fast down to 0.1, possibly 0.01, so we don't go too fast and poke a hole into our piece of wood. So we're going to slowly move it down, one click by one click. We're pretty close right there. And we're actually going to put it over our piece of wood. So now we get a piece of paper, and we're going to use a piece of paper to slide underneath so we can feel if it's touching the wood. So here we have our piece of paper. We're sliding it underneath. We're going to make sure that this bit is fully on our cutting area, not hanging off, because we want to make sure that we're getting the bit touching this piece of paper. So we use a piece of paper because that is super thin, and it's basically, when we know we can't slide the paper anymore, we know we're basically touching this piece, and we'll count that 0. Then that'll tell the machine this is the top of the board. So you can see I'm moving it very, very slowly. I'm doing one click at a time at 0.01 at this point. I'm starting to feel some resistance right here. I clicked it one more time, and now I can't slide the paper out, but I'm not crushing the piece of wood. So we know that's where we want our 0. So let's go back to the machine and click and 0 out our Z axis where the bit goes up and down. All right, here we are back at Carbide Motion, and we're going to click on Set 0. So we got our 0 for the Z. We got that piece of paper under there. We know that's as low as we want to go. And here we are, set 0 for X, 0 for Y, 0 for Z. We could 0 all at one point, but we haven't zeroed X or Y yet. We just zeroed Z. So let's click on 0Z, and you can see that we changed this to 0, 0, 0, 0. That's telling the Z the bit height up and down, the cutter head. This is the top of the piece of wood where we want to cut. And remember that retract height? This retract height is saying from this 0, every time we move, we want to lift it up 0.4, or 4, we want to lift it up 4 millimeters up so we can move over and then bring it back down to our Z height 0 and start cutting again. So these Z's are these zeros are very important. We want to always make sure we 0, because the 0 is where we start the cut. So we've zeroed Z. Now we've got to go back and 0 X and Y. So let's go back to the machine and do that. So we're back at the machine. We haven't moved anything yet. Once we click 0Z, we're going to lift this up into the sky to get this piece of paper out of the way. So let's go ahead and raise the bit up. Just a few to where we can slide the piece of paper out. That's perfect. And we don't have to worry about zeroing that anymore. We just told Carbide Motion where to do that. Now we're going to move this left and right until the center of this bit is on the center of this line. So again, we're doing it slow. We're at 0.01 maybe. And this is kind of an eyeball. I like to spin the bit because sometimes the flutes are in the way. So spinning the bit helps. And trying to get this into focus is pretty tough. So I'm going to guess right about there, from my view, that is the left and right, the XZ, or the X0. So now we're going to move it forward because we're back a little bit, try to get the Y0, and we can do both of these at the same time. You can see slowly I'm moving forward. Now I'm going to look on this side. I'm looking on this side. From this side, I want this bit to be in the center of this tip. The smaller the bit, the easier this is to do. We just need to go down a little bit more. And we're going to say that is about centered right there. So we've just now zeroed our X and our Y, our X and our Y here. And we've already zeroed Z, so let's go back to Carbide Create and zero that out. So here we are back at Carbide Create. We're going to go back to set 0 again. And we're going to 0 X and 0 Y. Do not set 0 Z. We've already done that. See, our value has changed because we've raised it up 0.7 so we can move it. Don't click 0Z. We have already done that. It remembers it. We're just zeroed Y and zeroed Z. We're finished here. We can click done. Now we are ready to go ahead and cut. So we're going to click done here. Click load file. Star Christmas tree. This was the Christmas tree we wanted. We are correct on our zeros. We're going to go back to run. Oh, you have to hit this done yellow to be able to click out of that. Click to run. And here is where we would hit start, but we want to go back and double check one last time and make sure that everything is correct. There's nothing in the way. Our clamps are clamped down tight. And we've turned the vacuum on if we have a dust boot. And we've turned the router on and we've set that to the proper speed. So let's go double check that. All right, guys, so we have everything ready. We're ready to cut. We just want to make sure everything's out of the way. We have nothing in the way of our cutting. We're at the lower left. We do want to raise this up just a smidge. You could raise it up all the way. The machine will fix it itself. But I like to raise it up off when I start before I hit this, just to make sure I have good clearance. So I'm probably going to raise it up to 4 millimeters or so off the board in Carbide Create. And then we're going to go ahead and turn our dial here at the top. If you have a Makita, it might be a little different, but you do have a dial. The DeWalt spins faster than the Makita. The Makita's one is a little slower than DeWalt's one. I like to keep this at about 2 to 3. The bigger the bit, the slower you want to go. But we're never running at 6. It doesn't happen. I'm going to say probably 3 is the max you're going to go. I like to keep it at about 3 for most of what I do. So I have it set at 3. Typically, I'd use a dust boot, but for you, this time, I'm going to do it dust-free so you can watch the cutter head go ahead and move. If you are interested in dust boot, I highly recommend Suck It, and you can see back in some of my other videos, I have a Suck It dust boot there. Go ahead and check that out. And if you have any questions, go ahead and leave that in the comment down below. But let's go ahead and start the cut. Here's hoping we did it right. Alright guys, here we go. We're on run. We got our DeWalt spindle running, as you can hear. We got our correct file running. And we're just going to click start. When we click start, it's going to come, if you've made this in Carbide Create, it's going to tell you what tool to select. Make sure you have that tool in there. We put a 201 that comes with your machine. It's a 1/4 inch square mill. Once we hit continue, there's no turning back. So you either need to stay by this pause button or make sure you're over there by the power off button to the machine. So hit continue and here we go. Okay guys, here it is. For some reason I loaded a different file that didn't have tabs. That's why you saw me grab the material real quick, because it was going to move around. But it worked out anyways. But we cut that piece off, and our star comes out just like that. Pretty perfect. Notice how the back is a lot smoother. There's very little sanding, and the top is really rough up here. That's because the 201 is a upcut bit, cutting from below and bringing the chips up. If it was a downcut bit, it would force the chips down, and the top part would be really smooth, like the bottom. So that's something to be aware of with this 201 bit that comes with it. If you're trying to make the top pretty, you want a downcut bit. If you're trying to make the bottom pretty, you want a upcut bit. Either way, we can sand this, take a sander, quickly fix this up. But that is the star. It came out great. And we didn't even cut into our wasteboard much. See? Well, we did a little bit right here. Again, it's a wasteboard. Don't worry about it. You're going to cut into it. You can always make a new one. Easy. But star, voila. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. We taught you how to take the Carbide Create software and make something like this. Real simple, real easy. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Thanks a lot for watching. If you can hit the subscribe button down below, that really helps me out, and it helps me make more videos in the future like this one. We'll see you next time. Happy cutting.